Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I have great pleasure to deliver my lecture called Hydrogen and Methane Production During Dark Fermentation of Sour Cabbage with Small Oxygen Addition under Low pH Conditions. Here I am cooperating from Turkey in Bengal University, and now I start what I work. Here is the reasons of the work, so why I work on hydrogen, because I try to find or improve method that would be replacing conventional method of product generation of hydrogen and remove the waste that polluting our environment, oceans and all environment. Because as we see, we don't have too much time because oil and gas will soon be disappeared. And coal is also not very high, especially in the time of growing population number. We need to we need to see what dark fermentation is. It's special case of anaerobic digestion. Usually, substrates are polycarbohydrates that decompose in the presence of water into sugars, and in acidogenesis, the best on acidogenesis based on pH, low pH between 5 and 6, and this pH and temperature of depending on bacteria mesophilic or thermophilic, means mesophilic between 35 to 40 degrees Celsius and 55 to 60 degrees Celsius according to thermophilic. But me as working in the climate of 4 seasons per year, the degrees of 36, so mesophilic, are fine and suitable because not high amount of heat is needed to add. So it's dark, and in acidogenesis stops. If stops this process, this is dark fermentation. That's it doesn't stop the process of anaerobic digestion of acid and acetogenesis and occurs methanogenesis. This is anaerobic digestion that is methane anaerobic digestion in which is producing methane. This methanogenesis can be blocked by stressing of bacteria by load, heat shock, or other stressing agents, but we can show also without to discern how work this dark fermentation if the process is natural, so unstopped. Whereas there are some cases in nature that this dark fermentation goes without this shock. These cases are very unfavorable to people. Here is another case that we have here, the example of protein, how it works, to show the difference between these polysaccharides. During this process, we have also production of hydrogen sulfide and ammonia processing. Here are three pathways of dark fermentations. Butyric, when we have production of butyric acid, is most favored due to low waste, Gibbs energy, but produce only 2 moles of hydrogen per 1 mole of glucose or other 6-member saccharides. Whereas propionic acid and acetic pathway, so producing acetic acid, which is more efficient in case of hydrogen production, is low favored due to high Gibbs energy. As I mentioned earlier, this dark fermentation occurs naturally, which is unfavored. But in our processes, we still can make such conditions, because the famous case of dark fermentation, we talk about gangrene, which these bacteria which produce hydrogen the infection in human body produce gangrene. And one example is the example of King Henry VIII of Great Britain, that ruled in 16th century, and after dying in 1546, his body exploded in that tomb, so as the reason as the cause by this bacteria, this hydrogen that plays in the body during this gangrene infection. Similar if you catch a body of infected by gangrene man, if you touch these places infected by the gangrene bacteria, you listen some noises. These noises are caused by the hydrogen, because this hydrogen is striking and the noise is occurring. Similar in the teeth, when this bacteria anaerobic, this in case of bacteria, this enterobacteria, if you have here in teeth undigested food like sugar, especially, the bacteria will eat, digest, and producing hydrogen due to by holes in the teeth, the hydrogen will come to this tooth, and the tooth would be flowed as the result of hydrogen. So we see that in nature we have very good examples how this dark fermentation works without any heat shock. So we decided also to produce without heat shock and with heat shock stressing. So here we have put the inoculum of pH 8.24, so neutral pH. As a substrate, we use sour cabbage, with high volatile solids, which is meaning that is early digested, because sour cabbage is pickled cabbage, traditional food in German as sauerkraut. In China and Korea, this dish is known as kimchi. So we put 2 cases of sour cabbage. First, initially digested and with high volatile solid, then put second case of sour cabbage that is more digested but lactic acid bacteria. This TS is total solid. So how much organic is in the sample? So sample of substrate, sample of inoculum. So we mix this in our reactors. As we see, here is the reactor, the setup that we check how that fermentation works. Here we have several reactors that are jar, simple glass jar. We have here put this glass jar with inoculum and substrate in 36 degrees Celsius. The temperature is stable by water bath. The water bath is supposed in thermometer. Here we have checking, and because of that, here we have the two outlets. In this case, we were adding some oxygen if necessary, and this the hydrogen and other gases, methane, carbon dioxide, is going up into these pipes, plastic pipes from polychlorophenylidene, and coming to the cylinder. In this cylinder is water. On the top, marked with the field is the layer made of oil, diesel oil, and clearing agents here called Ludwig. This is a special case, a special brand name of this case, and this is used to mark the level of gas. So the water is pushed, the skipping water by produced gas, and therefore we can read our measurements. So here we take this gas to analysis to gas chromatography or gas analyzer. Here we see how much hydrogen production occurs due to different oxygen flow rate. Because as I showed, in our research we add little oxygen to improve our hydrogen production. As we see that in case of high volatile, so not very digested, so initial state, the higher hydrogen production is much higher, and it occurs due to oxygen, some improvement in case of 0 to 0.091 milliliters per hour. In case of low volatile solids, the positive addition of oxygen occurs after in the range between 1.8 milliliters per hour to 2.1. So we see difference that in different we have for sample substrate we have much different optimal conditions. Here is the second case, so comparing the concentration. So in case of 10 grams of we see some effect of oxygen that also works, but our efficiency is not of hydrogen per substrate gram is not much higher. In take if we want to produce methane, not hydrogen, the situation is reversed. So we prefer more digested sour cabbage. Here is also case when we're checking this sour cabbage if inoculum is boiled or unboiled. So here in squares is case of boiled oxygen in boiled inoculum. So we see that hydrogen production produced by hydrogen by bacteria boiled, so heat shocked, The bacteria was for 15 minutes cooked in 100 Celsius degree, produce much higher concentration, much higher volumes of hydrogen than in case of unboiled. Here we see our for methane production that is reversed. In methane production are less preferable to use oxidation only as removal of hydrogen sulfide. Here we see our results. How change exactly hydrogen and methane. Also, in the case of sour cabbage, we looked about ethylene production, but which is promising for production of polymers. It's very low, too low to industrial, but show that there are some conditions could be shift that make the process that can be used also to help to replace some organic materials that are taken from traditional sources like oil or gas for waste, like here. So we see the cause, so more process, more complicated, more complex substrate. So straw, wheat straws, or corn straws are much more expensive for hydrogen production than less, for example, starch. So most expensive are wheat straw, then cotton waste, and least is potato. But demand for such kitchen waste removal it's much lower than in case of cotton. But these are showing how to mix our waste. The great advantage of dark fermentation compared to other methods is that we can produce this hydrogen for 24 hours. The disadvantages is still low efficiency in comparison to some methods of pyrolysis, but doesn't need so much energy like pyrolysis needs. So we have to combine many methods of hydrogen production. So as conclusion, is some air helps in dark fermentation in production of hydrogen. So here we see our references, and thank you very much. Now please open discussion.